Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another MTG Arena video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a Vraska Swarms Eminence standard Brawl deck. I think that Brawl is a really awesome format, and a major part of that fun is choosing a commander and building around it. It's a singleton format, which means that you have to choose a lot more cards than normal for the deck. Instead of telling you what I built and then showing you some gameplay, in the spirit of Brawl, I'm going to start with the commander, tell you what cards work well with it in different categories, and then give you my list as an example. That way, if you don't have the cards to make my exact deck, don't like a specific card, or just really anything, you can build the deck however you want, just based on some simple recommendations. Before we get into what cards synergize with Vraska, I have to talk about what she does. Vraska is a 4-cost Golgari Planeswalker. It says, whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. She also has the ability, -2 loyalty, create a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Deathtouch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy that planeswalker. So she makes 1/1 Deathtouchers that also have basically a planeswalker Deathtouch. Overall, this commander has a very clear theme of playing a lot of Deathtouch creatures and making them very big using Vraska's passive. While this isn't the most powerful or played commander, it's an interesting one, and it's actually the first Planeswalker commander I'm doing. There are a lot of cards that work well with Vraska, so I'll break them down into a couple of categories. Now, before I can actually talk about the cards, I do have to go over a couple things. First off, this Vraska is rotating out, so that means if they don't give us Historic Brawl, with the release of Zendikar Rising in September, this will no longer be a standard legal Brawl deck. So that almost stopped me from doing this, because every other commander I've done hasn't rotated out, but this has probably been the most fun I've had in Brawl for a very long time, so I thought I'd continue with it. So, the first category I want to talk about are just good Deathtouchers. Generally, to make this deck work, all you really need is Vraska and some good Deathtouchers and probably some kill spells. So, some good Deathtouchers include Shevel, Bane of Monsters, and honestly, I would say this is one of the best Deathtouchers. First off, it comes out turn 2, which is nice and early. It has a decent amount of toughness, so it can probably block some things and not instantly die. And most importantly, it has a whole thing with bounty counters, which encourage you to kill your opponent's stuff, which means that you can put a bounty counter on their, let's say, scariest thing, and then if they swing at you, you'll just kill it with one of your Deathtouchers. And so, this deck is really going to kill a lot of your opponent's things. It's really good if you get one of those quests on Arena that's like kill 20 creatures, assuming your opponents are playing creatures. It's very easy. It basically stalls combat. It's actually part of probably why I enjoy it so much. It's not just, oops, I'm dead to some huge Yorvo. It's, oh, sorry, your Yorvo can't swing. We're going to pause until I get a huge board state and can swing out. And meanwhile, you can probably attack with a couple of your Deathtouchers because, well, they're probably not going to block. If they do, they're losing a creature. And you probably have a couple Deathtouchers left over to block. Now, I would say probably the best Deathtoucher on the list is Hooded Blightfang. This one allows you to hit your opponent without actually having to hit them. So whenever you attack with a Deathtoucher, you're going to deal 1 damage to them and you gain a life. And then also, whenever a Deathtoucher hits a Planeswalker, it dies. So that's pretty awesome. It's kind of Cavalcade of Calamities, but for our Deathtouchers. And of course, this can't be your commander, but this is definitely one of the most important cards in your deck. So if for some reason someone gets you to tutor your library, like if, there's a card that lets you tutor and then lets your opponent tutor, that's probably one of the cards you want to go for. Now, other Deathtouchers include things like Questing Beast, which obviously you don't really think about it as a good Deathtoucher. I mean, yes, that is a part of the card, but it has so much on it. But in essence, it's a 4-cost 4/4 haste Deathtoucher that has increased, problems being blocked. Like, it can't be blocked by just a 1/1, which a lot of the time that's the problem with the Deathtoucher. It's like, yeah, you're going to trade, but you're just going to trade with a 1/1. No, Questing Beast is going to have an easy time getting through. It has Vigilance to also be a Deathtouch blocker, and since it's getting through, Vraska is making it bigger. So, yeah, really good Deathtoucher. Similarly, we have Ocarina Assassin, kind of a weird card that I'd never considered. 3-cost Golgari 1/1 with Deathtouch, but everything has to block it. So when you attack, if they have 32 blockers, every single blocker has to block Ocarina Assassin. And that's pretty awesome because it basically says kill one thing. And also it means all your other creatures get to go through, which Vraska rewards them by putting counters on them. On top of that, if you can put counters on Okran Assassin, you may be able to kill 5 things, and this becomes just a very powerful card. Another awesome Deathtoucher is Oakham Adversary, but it is a 4-cost Deathtoucher that can cost 2 less if your opponent is playing a green, has a green permanent, which is quite likely. A lot of the best commanders are green, including things like Kinnan, Niv Mizzet, those are green, and even if they're not, what's great about it is that it has Death Touch, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card, which, even if that never happens, that is amazing, because your opponent is instantly going to be more incentivized to block, therefore turning it into a kill spell. But what's also interesting is that, well, they also don't want to block because it's a Death Toucher, so it's a way to fit in the theme some card draw. These next one we're going to go through a little bit faster. We have things like Foulmire Knight and Hired Poisoner. Both are just very simple, low-cost Death Touchers. We have Vampire of the Dire Moon, which is amazing. Anything that has Lifelink and Death Touch is really good because, well, Vraska is making them bigger, which means you're gaining more life. We have Boot Nipper. We have Mire Triton. Again, that one's going to mill you a little bit, which isn't super relevant, but it is just a Death Toucher. There aren't that many in Standard, so it is kind of necessary to pick things like that. We have Fetid Imp, which is more of a flying Death Toucher, but it doesn't always have Death Touch, which, because it's flying, of course, it's going to make it easier to hit, but you do have to pay mana to give it Death Touch, so there is a little bit of a trade-off there. We have Orsov Enforcer. I love this card. You're going to block with it, turn it into a kill spell, then you get a spirit. Just really good. We have Grim Dancer, which can be a Death Touch lifelinker, like I said, very good. Or it can be a Death Touch Menacer, so you want Death Touch lifelink if you know your opponent's not going to block. If they only have combo pieces on the board, well, they're probably not going to block, so Death Touch lifelink. But if your opponent has, say, 3 creatures, you can give it Death Touch Menace. They're probably not going to double block because, well, then you'll kill both of them, and now you're going to be able to hit through to make it bigger. So there's a lot of versatility there. We have Pestilent Spirit, which the ability here doesn't really matter, but it is a 3/2 Death Toucher for 3, and it has Menace as well, so that's pretty good. We have Moss Viper and Sedge Scorpions, both 1-cost green, creatures. And we have Leyline Prowler. So that one also is a little bit of ramp. It has lifelink and Death Touch. Just overall, a lot of them have dual purposes. Pretty awesome. Next, we have some cards that work well with Death Touchers, basically death effects and revival spells. You're kind of going to be sacrificing these 1/1s to giant creatures all the time. So things like Call of the Death Dweller that can revive one of your creatures, like Hooded Blightfang, which is really important to the deck, and then give it Menace, which Menace plus Death Touch is devastating, is pretty awesome. We have Back for More, which is a nice revive spell. It's kind of expensive, but it does let them fight. The only reason I wouldn't say this is a great card is because most of your stuff is small, so the things that are going to be fighting are probably going to die, and at that point, you're just casting a 6-mana, kill spell, but you could. We have Midnight Reaper, just, you're going to be throwing things in the way, you replace the card in your hand, pretty awesome. Nightmare Shepherd, good card. Moldervine Reclamation is going to let you draw cards, and Erebos is also going to let you draw cards. You basically just want to replace those Death Touchers so that you can keep playing them. Now, there are, another thing that works really well in this deck is Proliferate, for a couple reasons. First off, this Vraska is Vraska that doesn't have a plus ability. So if you can Proliferate her, you can get more 1/1 Death Touchers. And actually, what's interesting about Vraska is oftentimes she doesn't get killed because your opponent's thinking, okay, I can kill her and get rid of that passive ability, and sometimes they do, but sometimes they're like, well, if I kill her, I just give them 2 more 1/1 Death Touchers. So a lot of times she doesn't end up dying, so you want to be able to proliferate to make more Death Touchers. So things like Karn's Bastion, it's a colorless land that in a 2-color deck, you really don't need to worry too much about your mana base. There is a little bit of concern here and there, but I think you can probably afford it, and it's just a nice thing that if you're running out of, if you have no cards in hand, well, every other turn, you can get a 1/1 with Vraska. We have Pollenbright Druid, just basic Proliferate, Courage in a Crisis, Proliferate, Evolution Sage, again, just Proliferate. And why that's so good is it not only adds counters to Vraska, but it also adds counters to all your creatures that have hit, because Vraska puts +1/+1 counters on them. So yeah, pretty awesome. Now for removal spells, I think there should be a decent amount of these. Your kind of whole goal is to make sure that you have enough Death Touchers to block every single creature that's attacking, or at least the majority of them. And so you don't want them to be able to keep big creatures, like things that give things trample, creatures with trample. You need to be able to kill those. So Kill spells are really important. You can use typical mortal spells, but because you are in a Deathtouch deck, you can use that to your advantage. You can use fight spells. You can use target creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature, so that, that works well because it's a Deathtoucher, and so you can generally get cheaper fight spells in green instead of in black, so that's pretty awesome. And then for draw spells, we have things like Murderous Rider, Oakham Adversary, like I talked about before, Castle Lochthwain, Liliana, Dreadhorde General, and Vraska Golgari Queen. I know I kind of read those out quickly, but you just want generic green-black ramp. Obviously, those two colors don't, not ramp, sorry, draw spells. Obviously, those two colors don't draw as well as blue do, but they are the next two easiest colors to draw in, especially in a deck like this. Now, a lot of other, commanders I built around have a lot more choice. Honestly, a majority of your deck probably just needs to be Deathtouchers, and so you probably just want to type Deathtouch and put a bunch of creatures in. But you can build your deck however you want. But these are just some cards that have a decent amount of synergy with the commander in maybe more ways than one. Of course, add any cards you like. Add more removal. Add more proliferate. Also, if I missed any awesome cards that Vraska synergizes with, let me know in the comments down below. It's interesting to see how an uncommon Planeswalker can be so powerful, and actually it is a pretty powerful deck, and I don't know, it just comes out of nowhere and seems to win. Anyway, moving on, my deck list can be found in the description, so check it out. Obviously, it's not perfect, but I enjoy playing it, and that's all that matters. You can copy that deck list, you can copy it make some changes, or I challenge you to go out and build your own deck. It is much more satisfying. Either way, I think Vraska is a really awesome Planeswalker and is one of the, a Planeswalker that should be looked to as a good commander for Brawl. I think some commanders, or Planeswalkers as commanders, are kind of negative, and that's probably more of the, 6th cost, here's a bum, Planeswalker that's going to protect itself in every way possible, versus Vraska is just a nice little, I could see it being a creature, I could see it being a, when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1. At your next upkeep, create a 1/1, and that ability. But it can also be interacted with by attacking. So I think that it definitely is something that they could print out in a creature, and I think that works well for a Planeswalker in Brawl. Either way, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this video in the comments down below. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next one.